I believe the Prime Minister is actually acting out of what he believes is the national interest. And I think that he believes that he has two conflicting national interests. On the one hand, Israel should bring its hostages home because our society is dependent on internal solidarity. We have to have a sense that we care for each other. Israel's internal unity is the most important thing for our security. Even though we have very fractious politics, at the end of the day, we know that we're one family and we live or die together. On the other hand, I think that he believes that he cannot allow Hamas just to rebuild itself. So it's true that we have a conflict and we have a lot of protests within Israel, but I don't think that the position of the Israeli government is irrational.
자, 삼프로TV 시청자 여러분, 그리고 전국에서 또 지구촌 곳곳에서 저희 삼프로TV의 콘텐츠를 늘 성원해 주시는 우리 투자자 여러분, 오랜만에 삼프로 특설 스튜디오에서 여러분 뵙게 되었습니다. 여러분들 중에서도요, 어렸을 때 학교에서 선생님이 너 장래에 뭐가 되고 싶냐 그러면 외교관이요 이렇게 얘기했던 기억을 갖고 계신 분들이 계실 겁니다. 저도 한때는 그랬습니다. 그런데 여러분 그 꿈을 이루기는 참 어렵죠. 몇 명 되지도 않고요. 그런데 엠베서더, 대사 그러면 우리와는 전혀 다른 세상에 있는 분들 이런 생각을 하게 되죠. 특별히 서울에 주재하고 있는 외국 대사분들을 만날 기회도 흔치 않지만 또 만난다 하더라도 무슨 대화를 할까 이런 생각을 많이 하게 되잖아요. 그런데 오늘 모실 이 대사님은 우리 방송을 통해서 또 삼프로TV에도 한번 나오셨던 걸로 기억을 합니다. 굉장히 친숙하게 우리와 사귀다가 이제 며칠 있으면 이스라엘 본국으로 돌아가시게 돼서 제가 이스라엘이라는 얘기를 했군요. 예, 그리고 지금 전 세계 가장 핫 이슈 그리고 걱정거리가 바로 이스라엘 비롯한 중동의 정세 아니겠습니까? 그래서 이임을 얼마 앞두지 않은 아키바 토르 한국 주재, 대한민국 주재, 이스라엘 대사님을 모시고 오늘 얘기를 좀 나눠보도록 하겠습니다. 자, 시작할까요? Hi, Mr. Ambassador. It's quite a long time.
Thank you for inviting me to do this interview with Sampro here in your office.
Yes.
So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. 자, 이제 대사님 이제 4년 동안의 임기를 마치고 이제 본국으로 돌아가시게 됐는데 그동안에 많은 일들이 있었을 거라고 생각이 됩니다. 그중에 가장 기억에 남는 일 몇 가지만 소개해 주실까요?
Yeah, I've lived here in the political life of Korea and the political life in Israel. You had here presidential elections, and I watched and observed with great interest the roller coaster of the Korean democracy.
Right.
Also in Israel, we had an election while I was here, and now we had the outbreak of a war since October 7th. For me, though, the most memorable moment for me here in Korea was when we were able to reach an agreement with the Korean government on exchange of COVID vaccines.
Right.
Now, it was actually the first bilateral agreement between any two governments, and it was negotiated very, very, very quickly, in less than a week.
Right.
Which is something hard for ministries of health to do. You know, the Pfizer vaccine had to be moved across the entire Asian continent at minus 70 C, 800,000 vaccines, which then have to be used. And it required a huge amount of trust between the governments, and for me, it was my best days here.
Right. Was it 2021?
It was 2021, yeah, it was just as the vaccines were becoming available. Israel had more Pfizer vaccines than it needed.
Right.
Korea did not have enough, so we found a way to help each other.
Okay, we remember, we appreciate.
Well, it was mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
And it was the right thing to do.
So, How has life in Korea been for you?
I've enjoyed getting to know Korea because Korea is this interesting, passionate, tortured, creative, hardworking, self-punishing society. And it feels just like I'm at home in a way.
Really?
Yes, in many ways. In many ways. Korea and Israel is very different, but also very similar. And I've really enjoyed this job. I mean, I'll tell you some of the frustrations I've had, but by and large, you know, I felt that my mission was to try to bring our countries and societies closer together for the mutual benefit. Obviously, I'm here to help Israel and my own people, but I don't think that it can be done unless we do something that we help each other. And this relationship still needs to grow. I've tried to do my part.
근데 어쨌든 뭐 한국하고 이스라엘하고 공통점도 있습니다만은 처음에 부임하셨을 때도 그렇고 4년 가까이 한국 생활 하시면서 뭐라고 할까 이 문화적인 차이 그리고 쇼크라고 할까요? 뭐 그런 것도 있으셨을 텐데 어떤 점이 가장 그 깜짝 놀랄 만한 차이였는지요?
Well, I'll give you an example. My embassy, half of my staff are Koreans and half are Israeli. My Korean staff, I learned very quickly that I have to be careful how I speak to them because they take my criticism too harshly. My Israeli staff, they don't listen to what I say. Or another example is that sometimes my senior assistant, she's saying to me when I'm talking to one of the other Israeli diplomats, why are the diplomats yelling at each other? Why are you arguing? And I said, we're not arguing, we're having a conversation. So that's a difference. There's a difference in the issue of decorum. And of course, I had to learn quickly not to make mistakes because you can easily make mistakes. If you behave like an Israeli in Korea, it won't always be understood in the proper way. I think it's fascinating because between Korea and Israel, there's huge similarities and huge differences. Like the similarities, we're ancient peoples, but we're modern states. We had miserable, catastrophic 20th century. We have, both of us.
Historically.
You had the Korean War. We had the Holocaust. And we were countries which were very poor when we were established in 1948. And both have achieved, we've become prosperous countries, both of us. Neither of us really have natural resources. Both of us have a problem with neighbors. Your neighbor has nuclear weapons. We have a neighbor who wants to get nuclear weapons. In our part of the world, we have a conflict between, we have the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, which is a conflict between two nations fighting over the same land. So either we'll find a way to compromise and accommodate each other, or we'll continue to fight. In the region, though, for example, the competition between Israel and Iran is more problematic, civilizational. The current Iranian regime does not believe that Israel should exist at all. They're willing to tolerate some sort of Jewish presence as a minority under Islamic rule, but they don't accept the very idea that there can be a Jewish state in this region. But here too, the Iranian regime, it won't be like this forever. The Iranians are also a very ancient country. We used to have diplomatic relations with Iran under the Shah. El Al used to fly to Tehran. But that I don't know when it will happen.
사실 대사님과는 친분도 있고 해서 조금 더 가볍고 좀 즐거운 얘기를 좀 한 다음에 좀 심각한 얘기로 이렇게 옮길까 했는데 얘기가 나와서 그냥 여쭤본 보려고 합니다. 이스라엘이 정말 하마스를 완전히 제거할 수 있다고 생각하십니까?
I think that it would be very, without a total occupation of Gaza and exercise of force at a level which we won't do, we cannot destroy Hamas entirely. In other words, we can't manage to capture or kill or force the surrender of every Hamas fighter. And it's very difficult for us to capture Sinwar, the leader. I do think, though, what Israel can do, Israel can assure that Hamas will not continue to rule in Gaza. And this is the major challenge and the great difficulty of why we haven't achieved the ceasefire yet. The whole world, Korean government, US government, wants the fighting in Gaza to come to an end. The challenge, though, is that both Israel and also our adversary need to live with the meaning of the ceasefire. Hamas wants to remain in power. They want that after the ceasefire ends, they continue to be the military power and political power in Gaza, and they want to rebuild it. Israel cannot tolerate that. We want their leadership either to leave or to go underground, but to allow another form of Palestinian governance or Arab governance to rule and rebuild Gaza. And this is why we're having such a hard time getting to an agreement, because Hamas wants to stay in power. They don't want to surrender.
그런데 그럼에도 불구하고 이게 가자 전쟁이 난 다음에 이스라엘에 대한 그 국제적인 그 여론이 좋지 않은 건 알고 계실 겁니다. 반 이스라엘 그리고 반 유대주의가 굉장히 크게 확산이 되고 있는데 그 가장 큰 이유가 민간인에 대한 피해가 이렇게 커져야 되는가라는 국제적인 여론이 굉장히 안 좋은 거 아니에요. 그래서 많은 사람들이 이스라엘의 지지자였다가 이스라엘의 어떻게 보면 뭐 거부자 혹은 반 이스라엘 정서의 소유자가 되는데, 제가 보기에도 전쟁을 하는 것까지는 모르겠으나 너무 많은 민간인들의 사상자가 나타나는 것은 여전히 비난을 피해갈 수 없는 부분이라고 생각하는데 어떠신지요?
So I'm going to say something that may be difficult for the viewers to accept. But if we look at this conflict, which has been going on now for nearly almost 11 months, we're talking about approximately 40,000 casualties on Palestinian side, according to Hamas Health Service, and it could be, but about half, about 20,000 are Hamas fighters, which were killed by Israel Defense Forces. I know it sounds cold-blooded, but we're talking about a combatant civilian ratio of 1 to 1, or maybe 1 to 1.5. The Korean War was 1 to 3 or 1 to 4. Kosovo was 1 to 3. I hate to say it, but in fighting a defensive war against Hamas, which is using a specific doctrine of war, fighting from within the civilian public, both people, hiding hostages with families, building tunnels which exit in hospitals and mosques and UN schools. Fighting behind the public, I don't know if, of course Israel has made mistakes, and of course in hindsight we did something here or did something there that we should not have. But I'm not sure that it's possible to fight this kind of war with less casualties. There's also tremendous damage in Gaza. I can't say exactly how many buildings have been damaged, but let's say somewhere between a third and half. Gaza has to be rebuilt. But what shall we do if we're sending in a citizens' army to fight an army within a city? Are we not going to use artillery to suppress fire on our troops? At some point you have to have pity on Israeli mothers also. So of course we can always do things better, but I'm not sure that this war can really be fought in a different way.
네, 그래서 말씀드렸습니다마는 국제적으로 이스라엘 이미지가 굉장히 나빠지고 있잖아요. 그런 점에 대해서는 대사님 어떻게 생각하시는지요?
I'd say a couple things. First of all, look, it's very difficult to fight a war with the entire world looking over your shoulder with a camera. It's hard.
Yes.
And that's a situation. But it also, it goes to a little bit to the question of, will any democracy be able to defend itself under similar circumstances? I mean, I think we're sometimes being put to a level of scrutiny and criticism, which I think has to be of concern for other liberal countries. Because what if they have to fight such a war? Will they not be allowed to defend themselves? It goes to the question of self-defense. But to address your point, look, Israel's image is damaged, and we're aware of it. I'd say two things, though. Number one is a country and a government has to make a decision. What comes first, image or security and safety of its citizens? I think that security and safety has to come first. We have now a situation where almost the entire north of Israel is evacuated because of Hezbollah rockets. We have to solve that problem, even if it'll harm our image. But I do agree that at some point, a country like Israel, if our image is too badly damaged, then it will also affect our security because we're not living alone. We need the support of other nations. So we have to find a way to manage it. But we're aware that our image is damaged.
뉴욕의 가장 유명한 대학 중에 하나인 콜롬비아 대학의 졸업식이 반유대주의, 반이스라엘 이 시위로 인해서 졸업식이 캔슬이 되는 정도까지 진행되는 걸 봤습니다. 그러니까 미국의 젊은이들 위주로 해서 반이스라엘 정서가 굉장히 많아지고 이런 게 확산이 되면 미국이 뭐 대사님 아시는 것처럼 굉장히 중요한 이스라엘의 파트너라고 할 수 있는데 이런 미국 내의 정서가 반유대주의, 반이스라엘 정서가 워싱턴까지 전달이 된다. 그럼 백악관이다, 국회까지 전달이 돼서 중요한 의사결정에서 이스라엘과의 어떤 공고한 협력 체제에 균열을 줄 수도 있지 않겠나 하는 생각도 드는데 그 부분은 어떻게 전망하시는지요?
I think the American public, broadly speaking, is supporting Israel. The American public, also, by the way, both sides of the political divide, both President Trump or former President Trump and both President Biden, both want the war to end and they want Israel to find a way to bring things to a close. You're talking about some of the scenes on the American university campuses. I'm worried about it. I think it's a very bad sign for the state of the academy in the United States because many of these students, they honestly have no clue what they're talking about. In these protest camps, they are aware that they don't know. They're connecting everything, but they're not employing any critical faculties. In other words, I think it's fine to be very critical of Israel. It's fine to be very angry at Israel. But you have to know why. And you have to know the situation. You have to understand Israel's situation. You have to understand the history of how Israel was established. It was established by the United Nations. We have a right to exist.
또 어떤 면에서는 이스라엘이 왜 하마스와 전쟁을 하는가? 물론 이제 하마스가 먼저 이스라엘을 공격한 것은 사실입니다만 이렇게 오랜 기간 그리고 일종의 전면전 같은 그런 전쟁을 지속하는 이유가 이스라엘 내부의 정치 시스템의 불안정 또 이스라엘 현 정부가 이렇게 하면서 어떤 이스라엘 국민들의 지지를 이끌어내려는 내부 정치의 역학관계 때문 아닌가라는 그런 생각도 좀 드는데 그 부분에 대해서는 어떤 생각을 갖고 계시는지요?
I don't think that the war did not break out because of Israeli politics. The war broke out because of Hamas' decision to attack Israel. And our intelligence misunderstood their intention. We thought that we could live in sort of like a modus vivendi. Hamas would rule Gaza. Every now and then they would shoot rockets at us. We would defend using Iron Dome. When things got out of hand, we would have an exchange of fire, and then we would go back to our unhappy coexistence. And then it was broken by Hamas, which came and attacked us. There are many theories about why that happened. One theory is that Hamas was worried about peace treaty between Israel and Saudi Arabia. They were concerned that there would be a deeper integration of Israel in the region, so that they wanted to do something to break it. But in truth, I don't know the exact reason why they decided to do it. I'm not sure that Iran knew it was going to happen. Now, the point that you're alluding to, I think, is that there are claims that Israeli government is not bringing the war to a quick close because of political considerations inside Israel. I would address it like this. I think that within Israel we have a deep argument right now. We have, on the one hand, we have one camp which is saying achieve an immediate ceasefire so that the 60, maybe 65 hostages who are still alive, so that we can bring them home living. Because there's about 112 hostages, but they're not all alive. The other part of Israeli government is saying, yes, that's important to bring the hostages home, but we can't bring them home and just put Hamas in power, leave them in power, because we'll simply have to fight another war again very, very soon, and we'll have more casualties. So this is the kind of challenge. As a diplomat, I really cannot comment on the critique of the Prime Minister that he's acting this way, that way. I believe the Prime Minister is actually acting out of what he believes is the national interest. And I think that he believes that he has two conflicting national interests. On the one hand, Israel should bring its hostages home, because our society is dependent on internal solidarity. We have to have a sense that we care for each other. Israel's internal unity is the most important thing for our security. Even though we have very fractious politics, at the end of the day, we know that we're one family and we live or die together. So he has that. On the other hand, I think that he believes that he cannot allow Hamas just to rebuild itself. So it's true that we have a conflict and we have a lot of protests within Israel, but I don't think that the position of the Israeli government is irrational. I think it can well be understood.
Okay. 물론 뭐 대사님이나 이스라엘 당국에서는 인정치 않으실 거라고 생각합니다만은 하마스 지도자를 암살하는 그런 상황이 전개됐고, 이란에서는 그날이 마침 새로운 대통령의 취임일이었고, 그 암살된 하마스 지도자마저도 그런 축하 사절의 한 사람이었다라는 측면에서 이것은 꼭 다시 복수를 하겠다라는 그런 의지를 여러 번에 걸쳐서 천명했지만, 아직까지는 이스라엘 본토에 대한 공격이 이루어지지 않고 있습니다. 어떻게 보십니까?
They might. It's not justified. I mean, we don't know who killed Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. Israel never took responsibility for it. But in any case, it's a violation, whoever did it. Okay, so it's a violation of the Iranian sovereignty, but that's not a justification for a missile attack on another country. I mean, if there'll be a violation of the Korean sovereignty, if a country will do something, if someone will come and assassinate someone in Seoul, the Korean government will respond appropriately, but they won't go to war against the country that did it. I mean, so I don't think that people pretend like Iran has the right to attack Israel. I don't think that's correct. We'll see what will happen. Iran launched a huge missile attack on Israel on April 13th. It was intermediate range ballistic missiles which go through space. It was cruise missiles and also drones. Approximately 300 projectiles were fired in one night. And Israel, with an international coalition, with the help of the United States, with the help of France, UK, also friendly states in our region, was able to block almost all of them. 95% of the missiles were shot down. So I don't know if Iran will want to risk another missile attack that will fail. In the past, Iran did terrible things. They destroyed the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires. They bombed the Jewish community center, killing hundreds of people. I hope they won't. I hope they won't.
But if it happens, how will Israel respond?
Like Israel, Iran is projecting power throughout the region. The Iranian, the Revolutionary Guard and the Ayatollah, they want to dominate the Arab world and beyond with their version of Shiite revolutionary ideology. It's a threat to Israel, but it's also a threat to all of the Sunni states. And I think it's a threat to the world, generally speaking. And they have many partners, Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas. Israel we have to be able to defend ourselves against all of them, and we will. We have the capacity because at the end of the day, despite the many arguments within the Israeli society, at the end of the day, we're united.
Right. 그래서 저의 관심은 빨리 이스라엘과 하마스 그리고 아랍 국가들의 이런 분쟁, 전쟁이 빨리 종결이 되는 게 경제를 위해서도 좋다고 보는데 대사님 어떻게 예상하시는지요? 조만간 전쟁이 끝날까요?
You know, I would like to tell you yes, but to speak honestly, you know, I was interviewed right after hostilities broke out on October 7th. I was asked how long this war will last. I said 2 months, certainly no more than 3.
그러니까 누구도 상상하지 않았잖아요. 누구도 제가 만난 어떤 전문가도 이스라엘과 하마스 간의 전쟁 혹은 이란을 비롯한 아랍 나라들과의 이 전쟁의 양상이 정말 조기에 종결되지 않고 그렇게 됐으면 좋겠습니다만은 정말 더 오래 가서 이게 정말로 이 중동 지역의 어떤 이런 좋지 않은 전쟁의 상황이 전 세계의 경제라든지 여러 측면에서 악영향을 주는 건 아닌가 하는 걱정이 있는데요. 어떻게 보시는지요?
Look, I agree with you. Things could get worse, but the way to deal with it is to be strong, not to be weak. Weakness will only invite attack. That's for sure. One of the other arguments, I mean, I mentioned one theory about why Hamas may be attacked, and that is because of Israel coming closer to Saudi Arabia. But there's also another theory, and that is, or maybe it's part of it, and that is that they saw that Israel was having a deep internal divide regarding the status of the judiciary in Israel. We had 9 months of very, very bitter conflict in the street because of a government initiative to reform the Supreme Court and the powers of the Supreme Court. And Hamas viewed it probably as some sort of breakdown or weakness within the Israeli society, and that invites attack. If Israel will show weakness or will be weak, will be attacked. That's just a fact. And this issue also it addresses the issue of Israel's image. If Israel will be beloved, and everyone will think that we're marvelous, but our enemies believe that we're weak, we'll be destroyed.
Okay.
So I can tell you that when I get back home, one of the first things that I do is I renew my Arabic lessons.
Really?
Yeah, of course. The Arabs are our neighbors.
I mean, what purpose?
I want to be able to understand my neighbors and to speak to them in their language. Also, Arabic is a very beautiful language, very similar to Hebrew.
Right.
It's more complex than Hebrew because, but And I like learning Arabic, and I want to learn Arabic.
Okay. What else are your plans after your return to Israel?
I go back home to Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then I have to make a decision what will be my next steps. I either will continue within the ministry or I'll do something else in the public sector. I don't see myself going into business. I don't think so. I want to work for the good of the Israeli people, and also for the connection of Israel and the Jewish people. If I'll find an appropriate, senior, effective position in my ministry, then I'll stay. If not, I'll do something entrepreneurial in the public sector.
자, 4년 가까이 한국에서 이스라엘 대사직을 수행하면서 그래도 대사님이 가장 중점적으로 추진했던 거 이번 기회에 한번 대한민국 국민들에게도 한번 알려주시면 좋을 것 같습니다.
I worked on a number of levels. Okay, my primary goal was at the political level, the economic level, and the defense level. At the political level, my aim was to bring a greater intimacy and connection between Korean government and Israel. Because we're friendly countries, but our relations are not intimate. We've never had a visit by a Korean president to Israel in 62 years of relations. Never.
Wow.
Last visit by Korean foreign minister in Israel was in 2014. Korean defense minister, last visit to Israel in 1995, 30 years ago. That's not right. So my first job was to deepen our political connection because that's very important that immediately sends a message throughout the system. And I think that President Yoon I very much hope that he'll visit Israel during his term. I think it could surely happen when region calms down. At economic level, our trade is, we at the beginning of my term, we signed free trade agreement, which was fantastic. It was Korea's first free trade agreement with any Middle Eastern state, and Israel's first FTA in Asia. And yet, our trade, in my opinion, is still underperforming. We've never passed 3.7 billion a year. We should be 4 or 5 times that. I also think that we have a room for a true synergy because Israel is innovation superpower. We're number 3 of startups in NASDAQ behind China and the United States. United States 1, China 2, Israel 3. It's crazy. And however, Korea is a design, manufacturing, and global marketing genius. So I think that if Korea, for example, wants to build the lead autonomous vehicle, it's going to need new forms of artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, machine vision that don't exist yet. It will require Israeli innovation. So I've worked very hard to try to deepen our economic relationship as well. At the level of defense, look, we've got the same problem. You have a neighbor who has missiles, has nuclear weapons, and you need to be able to shoot them down. And we've got a neighbor with short-range missiles. We've got a neighbor with ICBMs. We've got, in Lebanon, we've got more than 100,000 missiles that are Scuds that are also IRBMs. We have a country that's trying to develop a nuclear weapon and weaponize it. We have to be able to shoot down every single one of them. That requires a new level of technology that doesn't exist yet, probably laser-based. I would hope that Israel and Korea would work together on it. But so that's what I've been invested in.
Right.
But I also invested deeply on the connection with the Korean society, universities, media, culture, because I love that work.
Right.
We did some unusual things in our embassy. For example, we built the first in the world embassy metaverse. It's called Israel-Korea Metaverse, and it was a place where students and groups could meet each other virtually as avatars and have a whole...
Interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately, we were a victim to the collapse of the metaverse concept. But the project itself was very beautiful. We brought Pansori and Gomango musicians to Israel to play together with Israeli klezmer and Hebrew rock musicians. They performed together.
Really?
Yeah, we performed. We created an unbelievably beautiful video for our 60th anniversary in Pansori, Korean, and in Hebrew. I love doing this kind of thing.
이게 대사님이 평범한 분은 아니에요. 왜냐하면 어떤 나라 대사가 이렇게 다양한 활동들을 하시겠어요. 특별히 유명한 TV 프로그램에 몇 번 나오셔서 한국에도 대사님 팬이 많이 생긴 걸로 알고 있거든요. 이런 다채로운 활동을 하시게 된 이유랄까? 또 그게 얼만큼 대사님께 즐거운 경험이었는지도 좀 공유했으면 좋겠네요.
So, you know, I went on 2 variety TV shows, and we talked about it in the embassy. I said to Korean staff, who are wonderful, by the way, I said to them, don't worry about mistakes, don't worry about risk, let's think about opportunity. Come to me with your ideas. So a press officer said, you know, we could do this. And I said, but you know, there's a risk here. I could look pretty bad on it. But I thought, yeah, but there's also an opportunity. In other words, we get in front of the whole country. I decided to do it, and it worked out, I think, quite all right. Because Israel will always be a small embassy. We won't be able to compete with budgets with Germany, not even with Switzerland. We just don't have those kind of budgets. And on the other hand, if I want to make any inroads here in Korea, because Israel is out of sight, out of mind, we're at the other end of Asia, we have to make noise, good noise.
Good noise.
So that was my policy as head of mission. Make good noise.
You did well.
Thank you.
자, 인터뷰가 이제 끝나갑니다마는 한국 분들, 특별히 한국의 젊은 분들에게 주시고 싶은 말씀이 있으면 한 말씀 부탁드리겠습니다.
I visited many universities and met many young people in Korea. And the Korean young generation is uniquely skilled. They're impressive, capable, and overly pessimistic.
Pessimistic.
Overly pessimistic. I think the young people of Korea have to overcome this, and I think they will. Because, I mean, it's reflected in the birth rate, and it's reflected in the reticence to establish families and have kids, and not worry so much about what it means to raise a family here. I'm aware of how much apartments cost here. It's even more expensive than Israel, which is also very expensive. But I think that young people need to see what life is about. Life is about living. Living means falling in love, creating families. Families are good for you. Children make you realize that there's things that are more important than yourself. I think this will all happen. Korea is very ancient, and therefore it has within it all of the strengths necessary to overcome all current crises. I guess I wanted to say to young people is, try not to feel so much angst. Don't waste your life making too much money.
자, 여러분, 이임을 앞둔 아키바 토루 대한민국 주재 이스라엘 대사와 얘기를 나눠봤습니다. 아키바 토루 이스라엘 대사께서 약속하신 것은 이스라엘로 돌아가더라도 계속 이런 외교 관으로서 일을 하거나 아니면 이스라엘과 한국과의 관계에서 공헌하는 일들을 하겠다고 했으니까 앞으로 이스라엘의 상황 전개에 따라서 또 다른 인터뷰를 준비할 수 있을 것 같습니다. 저는 이렇게 인사를 드리고요. 다음번 특별 인터뷰 시간을 통해서 더욱더 깊이 있는 인터뷰 준비할 것을 약속드리면서 이렇게 인사를 드리겠습니다. 끝까지 시청해주신 여러분 고맙습니다. Let's keep in touch and then
Let's keep in touch.
thank you very much for your
Thank you very
time,
much,
Ambassador.
All the
Okay,
best.
thank you very much.
감사합니다.
고맙습니다. 감사합니다. Thank you very much.
Thank you.